Okay, welcome back to this segment of 5 Minutes with KeRusso and our journey to understand the Bible. What I'm trying to do is give you keys to unlock this Bible so that you find it interesting, you can understand it, and you find it how it's relevant to you. Now, sometimes when you read the Bible, that understanding is going to come to you just like that. It's like, wow, you're just really tuned in to what God is saying. Other times you can read a text and then it's like, you don't get it. What's this about? And you have to do a little more digging. Sometimes we want to do the digging, but I want to share with you just a thought here. In my personal experience, when I've done the digging to understand a text, it's always been worth it. Always. There is not a bad place to read in this book. It's all good. So don't be afraid to dig, okay? And what I want to do in today's segment is share with you one of those sections that we tend to kind of skip over. We don't want to dig too much, but if you'll do some digging, it's good. In chapter 10 is a genealogy, okay? Don't speed read this genealogy. Spend some time here. Chapter 10, verse 1, you get another one of those little threads, these markers. This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, okay? Here's Moses out in the wilderness with these Israelites. Maybe they're still at Sinai. He's writing the history of how they got to where they are, how God's worked in people before them to get to where they are at that particular day. And now he's pulling in another thread, the timeline of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And so you get this genealogy. If you read through it, and if you wanted to, you could count the names, and you're going to come across 70 names. Okay, this is not an exhaustive, complete genealogy, but that number 70 is significant. You see, for Hebrews, the number 7 was a number for completion. The number 10 also was a number for completion. So 7 times 10 is really complete, 70. These people who came off that boat did a really good job fulfilling that charge given to them in chapter 9, verse 1 by God when he said, you be fruitful, you go out, you fill the earth. They did that. Now, as you read through these 70 names, you're going to come across names that just get mentioned and that get passed over as they go to the next name. Then you're going to come across names that get a little bit more ink, like verse 8. You're going to come across a guy by the name of Nimrod. And several things are said about him. Well, why Nimrod? That's a good question. And you ought to do a little digging there to see if you can figure out why Nimrod's mentioned. Okay? Why he gets more ink. Now, you also are going to notice that sometimes you get the names of individuals and sometimes you get the names of nations. For instance, in verse 15, Canaan, an individual, was the father of Sidon, an individual, his firstborn, and of the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, Archites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. Okay, I think it's important to know that at this point in the world's history, there's no parasites, there's no termites that are mentioned. Well, no, that's not what's going on. What's going on? Our nations are being mentioned here. Okay, it's a mixture, sometimes individuals, sometimes nations. Okay. Now, verse 21, sons were also born to Shem, whose older brother was Japheth. Now, your Bible might have a little footnote there that says another way to read that is Shem, who was the older brother of Japheth. That's the more accurate way to read this. Sometimes the Hebrew is a little confusing. Chapter 10, verse 1, Shem's mentioned first. He is the older brother. But it does raise a question. Why doesn't it say he's the older brother of Ham? Just it mentions Japheth. That's a good question. You ought to do a little digging there and see if you can figure that out. But let me share something else with you. You want to know what Sham's, what the meaning of his name is? I want to tell you that one. It's name. That's it. Sham's name means name. You could imagine Noah and his wife, she's giving birth to this little boy. They're all excited. Oh, what are we going to name him? Well, I don't know. I can't think of a name. Well, we're just going to have to call him Name. We'll just call him Name. Okay. I don't know why they named their son Name, but they did. And that's not really what's important. It's what the impact of a name. Okay. See, there's a name that you're called by, and then there's a name that you're known by. And it's the same. That's with everybody. If you look at your family history, you may not know the way back genealogy, but you know the people closer to you. And you think of certain names, and you'll say, this person had a positive impact on us, and everybody was able to build on that name that he made. Then there's some people that you'll look and you'll say, this person was more negative, and we had to overcome the name that he made. We didn't want to be known by that name. That's the way family histories are. Your family has a name. It might not be a good name. Hopefully it is, and you build on it. But if it isn't, you can be a transitional person, and you can say, I'm going to build a good name, and my kids can build on what I do. So just think about that, okay? All right, that's it for today. Leave a comment if you want, or send an email at booksbycaruso@gmail.com. Use your blessings well.